Welcome. Take a slow, deep breath, okay? And imagine yourself stepping back into a world shaped by ice, wind, and prophecy. Tonight, we will journey north far beyond the green fields of Europe and deep into the frost-bitten memory of early medieval Scandinavia. This is the world of the Norse, a landscape carved by glaciers, dotted with small wooden villages, warmed only by firelight and the stories passed down in hushed voices. But this isn't the world of Thor's hammer on the movie screen, or Viking helmets with horns. This is the older world, the colder one, a place where the gods were terrifying, and the end of all things Ragnarok wasn't just a myth. It was a looming certainty, inevitable, awaited, prepared for in this quiet, immersive journey. We'll explore that world as it was lived and believed. We'll begin with the daily life of a Norse villager living under the shadow of the end times, where every crack of thunder might be a god in battle, and every long winter might be the first breath of the final war. From there, we'll follow the story of Fenrir, the monstrous wolf child destined to devour Odin himself. Then we'll climb the branches of Yggdrasil, the great world tree, to explore the strange and layered realms of Norse cosmology. And finally, we'll sit quietly inside Odin's golden hall, where the gods themselves wait with solemn certainty for the end they cannot stop. Let the tension of the day fall away now. There is no rush. The stories are ancient. Tag, waited. This long to be told. Note, then don't mind if you drift off before the end. Close your eyes if you wish, and allow yourself to settle in. Let us begin. The air inside is thick gnawed with danger, but with the warm sense of peats, smoke, and damp wool. Outside, the wind moves slowly across a frozen plain. There is no clock to tell you the hour, only the sky's dim blue, the weight of cold, a sense that your tasks will be the same as they were yesterday. You are a villager in a Norse settlement, somewhere between the jagged coastline and the forest edge. Your world is small, your longhouse, your family, the livestock, the local yard who hold sway over your labor, and beyond that, a world of gods, monsters, and fates written long before you were born. You live beneath the shadow of a myth that is not just a story. It is a prophecy, and everyone you know believes it. Ragnarok. The end of the world. And unlike in other mythologies, this end is not avoidable. It is not a test to overcome or a punishment to be averted. It is promised. It is certain. One day, say, the sky will crack open. The stars will fall. Wolves will devour the sun and the moon. Giants will march out from the mountains, and the gods, mighty and doomed, will fight one last time. This is not a bedtime story. It is the spine of your culture. You grow your barley, mend your fishing net, and whisper prayers not just for a good harvest, but for a little more time. And so, even in peace, there is an undercurrent of dread, knowledge that everything is temporary, that the tree Yggdrasil itself, whose roots stretch across all worlds, is destined to tremble and split in winter. That sense deepens. The long dark comes early. Snow piles high against the doors, and the wind moans like a forgotten god. The cattle are restless. The old man mutters that this could be Fimbulvitr, the terrible winter that will last 3 years without a summer. You do not laugh. You wrap your cloak tighter, because you've heard the signs before, and they are chilling. Ragnarok will begin when the world grows cold, when the bonds of family and oath begin to loosen, when wars are fought without honor, when brothers betray brothers and the sacred bonds fray. And all around, you see it. Storms more violent than before. Feasts where old codes are broken. A bitter chill that clings to spring. You are not educated in the modern sense, but you have knowledge, cultural memory carved into poetry, recited at fireside. You know the names: Surtur, the fire giant, with a sword of flame; Charmangander, the world serpent, so vast it circles the earth and bites its own tail. Rhyme, captain of the ship Naglfar made from the nails of the dead waiting to sail into the final battle. And then there is the wolf. Fenrir. Still chained, they say. For now, you sometimes wonder, will it happen in your lifetime? The question lingers in the backs of minds, unspoken. It influences how people live. There is no belief in a peaceful eternity. Instead, the Norse find peace in preparation, honor in resistance, even in death, a place in the hall of warriors. There is comfort in that, sort of. Your daily life is filled with repetition, chopping wood, feeding goats, weaving cloth, but beneath it all is this whisper of fate. The gods are not eternal saviors. They are distant, flawed, and fighting their own doom. You do not worship them as protectors, but as beings caught in the same web of destiny. The temple, if your village has one, is simple. A wooden hall, maybe a stone altar, sacrifices of meat or ale offered not for forgiveness, but in recognition. You are not trying to be saved. You are trying to be remembered when everything ends. And so, the rhythm of your life is one of harsh seasons and quiet fear, of labor and listening, preparing just in case. Today is the day that Jalahorn is blown by Heimdall, signaling that Ragnarok has come. You would not panic. You would stand. You would take your axe, because that is the only dignity left. And even if you are not a warrior, even if your name will not echo in Valhalla, your resistance, your quiet work, and your place in the long line of those who endured. Khanda, too, is a kind of defiance. Frost creeps in, the sun fades, but for now, you carry on as if the end were not already written. Now, let us leave the small Norse village behind, just for a while, and rise up into the mythic stories told by its fires. The sagas tell of many gods and many beasts, but none so feared, so tragically bound by fate as the wolf called Fenrir. He was not born evil, was born of a union strange and unsettling between the trickster god Loki and a giantess named Angerpoa. From that union came 3 children, each more fearsome than the last. There was Jarmagandr, the serpent destined to coil around the world in battle Thor. There was Hel, half dead and half living, ruler of the underworld. And then there was Fenrir, a wolf, enormous. Too fast, the gods, seated in their high hall in Asgard, looked down upon Loki's monstrous children and felt something unusual, something rare for gods. They felt fear, and so they acted not with valor, but with calculation. They cast Jarmagandr into the sea, where he would grow large enough to encircle the world. They sent Hel to rule over the dead, exiling her to the shadowy realm that came to bear her name. And Fenrir, for him, they took a different approach. He was too dangerous to leave unchecked, but too mighty to destroy outright. So the gods, ever proud, made a decision. They would raise the wolf themselves inside Asgard. They would feed him, watch him, and study him. And for a while, it worked. Fenrir grew and grew. His appetite was boundless. His size doubled, and then tripled. And with it, so did the unease of the gods. Only one among them dared to approach him without fear. Tyr, god of war and justice, whose hand rested lightly on his sword, would feed the wolf. Tyr spoke to him softly, treated him not as a beast, but as something closer to kin and Fenrir. He listened. He seemed calm, but the gods are not a trusting sort. Their vision extended beyond kindness. They remembered the prophecy that Fenrir would one day break free and kill Odin himself, and so they plotted to bind him. Their first attempt was Kruta, massive chain called Luingra, forged of iron and thunder. They brought it to Fenrir, laughing, telling him it was a game, a test of strength. Could he break it? He could, It snapped like dry twine. So they tried again, try me. They called it even stronger, even heavier. And again they brought it to Fenrir, with jokes and cheers. He let them wrap him in it. And again he broke free, the gods feigned amusement. But their laughter was thin at last. They turned to the dwarves of fortified master forgers and keepers of strange knowledge. They asked for a chain unlike any other. And so the dwarves wove Kleena. It looked like nothing more than a ribbon, smooth and soft, light as silk. But its strength came from impossible things. The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, the spit of a bird. Things that cannot exist, and yet did. The gods returned to Fenrir with this final binding. They joked again. Another game, another test. But this time, the wolf hesitated. He knew deception. And so, he said, if this is a trick, then one of you must prove your honor. One of you must place your hand in my mouth while I am bound. By sense betrayal, I will bite. Only to stepped forward. Only Tur placed his hand between the wolf's teeth. And so, Fenrir allowed the gods to wrap him in the silken chain. He pulled twice and felt it hold. He strained, roared, dug claws into the earth, and it did not break. The gods laughed. Fenrir thrashed, tied, his eyes wild with fury, and Tyr did not cry out. As the wolf bit down, Tyr lost his hand, but kept his word. And there, bound on the plain, Fenrir lay, his mouth held open by a sword, forced to howl with every breath. He waits. The prophecy says that when Ragnarok begins, this ribbon will fall away. Fenrir will rise, and in his wrath, he will run across the world, devouring everything in his path. He will kill Odin, the Allfather, and then he himself will fall, struck down by Odin's son. But that time has not yet come. So he waits bound, not just by chain, but by betrayal. The gods who fear prophecy, in short, it came to pass. By acting on their fear, and Fenrir, monstrous though he may be, was never given a choice. Only a future written for him before he could speak in this quiet space. We pause to consider the wolf, the gods, and the fine line between justice and preemptive punishment. Now, let us drift upward, again beyond wolves and warriors, beyond gods and giants, beyond even the skies above Midgard to the vast and ancient structure that cradled the Norse cosmos itself. It is called Yggdrasil, the world tree. Imagine it not merely as a tree in the way you might know one, but as a pillar of all that exists. Its roots burrow into hidden dimensions. Its branches reach across space and time. It is not metaphor. It is not symbol. In Norse cosmology, Yggdrasil is real. A great ash tree, eternal, alive, and trembling. The world, for a Norse villager, was never just the dirt under their feet. It was this great interconnected system of 9 realms, each one home to different beings, different rules, and different fates. They were not separate like countries on a map. They were woven together, like threads on a loom.midgar. The realm of humans was only one, and it was not at the center, not exactly, it was suspended. Let us walk the tree together. Below Midgard lies Niflheim, the realm of cold and mist. It is ancient, predating even the gods. It is said that the first spark of life came when Niflheim's ice met Muspelheim's fire, and Muspelheim lies opposite. It's a realm of endless flame and brightness, home to the fire giants, including Surtur, the sword-wielding being who will one day burn the world to the north. In the roots lies Helheim, the land of the dead who did not die in battle. This is where Hel, the daughter of Loki, reigns. Her hall is not one of torment or reward, but one of silence, waiting, and shadow. Most villagers who never went to war would likely have imagined their souls wandering here above Midgard. In the high boughs of Yggdrasil lies Asgard, the golden realm of the Aesir gods Odin, Thor, Frigg, and others. It is a place of halls and walls, of divine feasts and long councils, yet even there, fate is inescapable. Not far from Asgard lies Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods, older and more attuned to fertility and nature. The two tribes once warred, then merged, their deities traveling between realms. It was not always peaceful. Somewhere near the middle branches lies Alfheim, the realm of the light elves, ethereal, radiant, and difficult to describe. These beings were neither quite gods nor quite men. Villagers might see a shimmer in the forest and wonder if an elf had passed, and beneath the bark and loam, buried deeper than even Helheim, lies Svartalfheim, also known as Nidavellir, where the dwarves toil in dim caverns. These were not whimsical dwarves, but shrewd, sometimes cold artisans. From there, forges came Gleipnir, Thor's hammer, countless weapons of legend. Then there is Jotunheimer, the realm of the giants frost and stone, wild and ancient, the enemies of the gods. The old forces of chaos, but not evil, simply older. Each realm connects through Yggdrasils, sometimes through roots, sometimes through bridges like Bifrost, the shimmering rainbow road that connects Midgard to Asgard. But the tree itself, it is not static. Even as it holds the world's Yggdrasil suffers, it trembles. It is gnawed at, its bark chewed by the dragon Hggr, its branches pecked by unnamed birds, its stability threatened by rot and time. A squirrel, Ratatosker, runs up and down its trunk, ferrying insults between the eagle perched atop the tree and the dragon below. It is a strange and subtle metaphor communication as conflict. In this belief system, the cosmos is not perfect. It is not serene. It is barely holding together. Just as a villager might wake to find their thatched roof sagging with frost, with their cattle coughing in the early spring cold, so too did they believe the universe itself was weathered, strained. Imagine being a Norse person by your hearthfire, staring into the flames and believing that the world above was real, that a squirrel truly carried messages between ancient beasts, that a tree's pain could shape your own. Imagine growing up with stories that insisted the world had an endpoint, just an afterlife, but an expiration. This cosmic instability, far from distant, was felt deeply in daily life, when crops failed, when storms arrived early, when a neighbor vanished into the snow. It's all aligned with the idea that Yggdrasil was creaking, that the end, Ragnarok, was drawing closer. Yet, even with this knowledge, this tension running through all of existence, the Norse people endured. They did not worship perfection, okay? They revered resilience. And so, we sit quietly with the image of a tree, vast, shimmering, wounded, taut, a universe not in balance, but in motion, and still it stands. Now, let us rise, slowly, drifting higher once again, above the flickering hearts of Midgard. Beyond the murmurs of trees and the snow-covered fields, higher still, till the soft gold of Asgard's halls begins to emerge in the distance, a place not of clouds or heaven as we imagine them, but of cold stone, echoing corridors, and watchful eyes. Welcome to Valhalla, the golden hall of Odin, the all-father to a Norse villager. Valhalla was both a distant dream and a solemn reminder of all they were not. Imagine you are not the farmer or fisher who tills and toils. You are one of the few, perhaps one who died, sword in hand, axe raised, breath fading on the battlefield. If the Valkyries chose you, your soul would be carried upward, not to peace, but to preparation. Valhalla was not paradise. It was a waiting room for the end of the world. Inside, the hall is vast, so vast it could not truly be measured. The roof is thatched with golden shields. The rafters are made from spears. The benches stretch endlessly, filled with the chosen Dedin Herger, as they are called. They eat, they drink, they fight, yes, they fight, each day. They rise and battle one another with great vigor, swords clashing, spears flying, until death finds them again. But each night their wounds vanish. They rise once more to feast, drink mead, and prepare for another day. And so it repeats for eternity. Not quite. For Ragnarok, Valhalla is not a reward. It is a training camp for the final battle, when the gods will face their doom. The fate of the 9 realms will be sealed. In the center of it all is Odin, the one-eyed god, seated on his high throne lit Scalf. From there, he sees all. His 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, fly across the worlds each day, bringing back thoughts and memory. His wolves rest at his feet. Odin's hall is one of knowledge and sacrifice, for Odin himself sacrificed greatly, not just in war, but in wisdom. He hung himself on Yggdrasil for 9 days and nights to gain the runes, the secret knowledge. He gave one of his eyes in exchange for a drink from Ymir's well, the spring of wisdom. In this place, poetry is sacred. So is prophecy. Odin does not drink mead only for pleasure, but because the mead of poetry, once stolen from the giants, flows within the hall. Those who sip from it gain the gift of words, of verse, of storytelling. It is not a place merely of brute strength. It is a sanctuary of ideas wrapped in blood and destiny. To live in Valhalla is to wait. Each night's revelry is haunted by the knowledge that it must end. For even Odin, wise and powerful, knows he will fall. He has seen it. He will meet Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, in battle. He will be swallowed. The warriors at his side will face giants, dragons, and death. They will try to turn the tide, but fate is written. Even Balder, Odin's beloved son, the radiant one who dwells in Breidabli, will die slain by a dart of mistletoe, the only thing his mother did not make swear peace. That story haunts the halls like a breeze in winter. The gods of Asgard, despite their shining walls, are not immortal in the way we think. They are powerful, wise, and strong, but they are also doomed. And so, Odin watches. He gathers warriors. He prepares, not for victory, but for resistance. This is the elite life, in a sense. But it is not rest. Even at the top of the world, in a hall of feasting and gold, the end seeps in. Imagine now, being that Norse villager again. Hearing these tales from an elder beside the fire, or from a skald at a gathering. You chew your bread a little slower. The wind outside howls. You do not expect comfort after death. You expect duty. Whether as a soul bound for hell's dim hall or Valhalla's shining one, your fate is not yours to choose. It is a pattern you walk within. Even the gods cannot step off their threads. But there is one quiet comfort, the belief that even in death, you are part of something vast, something that stretches far beyond your short years and your cold mornings. You are a small piece of a great tree, of a story already known, and of a world brave enough to face its own end with song and steel. And now, we return back to the quiet of the present. The fire has long burned down to embers. The winds outside have softened. The weight of so many stories of frost giants and world trees, of feasts in golden halls and fates etched deep in the grain of the cosmos gently fades. It is strange, isn't it, to think of a people who lived beneath such a heavy sky, farmed, fished, and raised their children in a world where the end was not only known, but certain. And yet, they woke each day. They tilled frozen soil. They sharpened their axes. They wove stories around the hearth. For the Norse mythology was not separate from life. It pulsed in the blood of the cattle, shimmered on the surface of icy fjords, whispered in the creak of the roof timbers. The gods were not perfect, nor distant. They were flawed, mortal, bound to fall, and perhaps that made them all the more meaningful to live in the shadow of Ragnarok. can still choose to live to know the wolf was coming, and still teach your children to speak of courage, to believe that even the gods would one day fall. And yet, lift your face to the wind, build a boat, or light a fire in their stories. There is an odd comfort, stillness that comes from knowing that nothing is permanent, not even suffering, not even glory. All things pass, and in that passing, there is peace. So now, as you lay back, listening to the last echoes of those ancient northern tales, know this: you do not live in a world where giants rumble through the hills or Valkyries wait to lift you from the battlefield. Your roof is not made of turf. Your fate is not sealed by threads spun from Norns beneath a cosmic tree. And yet, the rhythm of their lives, the quiet endurance, the way they face the cold with stories and strength, still lingers. Let it settle over you like a warm fur cloak. Let the weight of it lull you. The Norse lived with doom and made poetry from it, and now, with the world quiet around you, may you drift as they once did between stars and snow, between memory and myth, between sleep and story. This is a roam of small discomforts and persistent background noise, of daily frustrations and strange beliefs. A Rome built not just on military genius or imperial ambition, but on latrines that rarely flushed in fish sauce that could, quite literally, turn deadly. We will move gently through 4 layers of this ancient world. First, we descend into the lived experience of the ordinary Roman sweating, squatting, and shouting through a day in the crowded city. Then, we'll float into the strange, spiraling tale of Nero, a boy emperor tangled in a web of power and paranoia. Next comes the secret world of the cult of Mithras, buried beneath temples in silence. And at last, we rise again into the perfumed chambers of elite Roman womanhood, where appearances were everything, and freedom was ... complicated. You don't need to remember it all. Let the details pool and drift like reflections on the surface of a bath. Let your mind wander as it pleases, and if it chooses to rest, so be it. Now, imagine yourself waking in a narrow Roman insula, the first light of day filtering through a smoke-blackened window. It's early morning in the Suburbia, densest, noisiest, most lived-in neighborhood of Rome, a place thick with voices, smells, and foot traffic. Imagine yourself stretching awake on a straw-stuffed mattress laid out on a wooden platform. There is no separate bedroom, just a curtained corner of a shared space. You are one of many in a single-room apartment, stacked high above others, like it in a creaking, sun-baked insula. Outside, the street begins to murmur. Vendors setting up stalls, donkey carts rolling past, and above all, the endless chatteromans talk loudly and often, as if silence were an enemy to be conquered. There's no toilet in your home. If you're lucky, your building has a shared latrine on the ground floor. If not, you carry your waste to a nearby public facility. These latrines are community-long stone benches with holes in them, no dividers, no privacy. Water trickles beneath. If the plumbing works that day, sponge on a stick serves as shared toilet paper dipped in vinegar between uses, assuming someone remembered to leave it behind. On your way to the forum, you pass overflowing gutters. Rome's streets slope inward to funnel rain and everything else down the middle. Human waste, animal droppings, spoiled food, and bathwater all mingle into a slick, odorous sludge that collects in the central channel. If it hasn't rained, it stagnates. If it has, it splashes. Careful where you step, and look up, too. Roman apartments can stretch 5 or 6 stories high, and there's no law against tossing a chamber pot's contents out the window, only a polite shout of warning. Caveat: heads up, hunger grows. Let's see, for breakfast, it's likely a bit of bread or porridge, perhaps an onion. The richer folk might have honey or cheese, but you'll make do with coarse grain and perhaps a smear of olive paste. Maybe you'll venture to a popina, a simple tavern, where warm chickpea stew simmers. The scent of garlic hangs heavy in the steam. You eat standing up or perched on a stool. Tables are rare. For water, you head to the public fountain. Rome's aqueducts are marvels of engineering, but plumbing doesn't reach every home. So you fill your amphora or clay jug and carry it back, navigating a crowd that never really thins. Midday brings heat. Rome can swelter, especially in the summer, and stone traps warmth. The smells intensify. Fish brine, sweat, crushed herbs, and urine from the tanning vats near the river. You pass a shop selling garum Rome's beloved fermented fish sauce. It's pungent, to put it gently, brewed from fish innards left to decay in the sun with salt, rich in umami. Yes, but also a frequent vector for food poisoning is stored improperly, okay? And many did. You're jostled constantly. There are no sidewalks. Carts rattle by. Crowds press in from all sides, and the noise never ceases. Hammering from the smithy, hawkers shouting prices, donkeys braying, cuging, laughing, arguing, running. Your work, whatever it may be, is noisy, physical, and constant. Laborers lift, haul, bake, or sew. Bakers begin before sunrise, builders and potters toil until dusk. If you're a scribe or a tutor, perhaps your work is less demanding on the body but still long and subject to the whims of patrons. As dusk falls, the city doesn't quiet. Oil lamps flicker in windows, and wine begins to flow. Taverns fill with gossip and smoke. Strangers argue over dice and the latest scandal in the Senate. Women stay inside respectable ones, anyway. The streets are not safe after dark, not without a torchbearer or an escort. You feel the wear of the day in your bones, muscles sore, throat dry from dust and shouting. You might visit a public bath if you can afford the entry fireplace to scrub down, soak, and socialize. But the water isn't always clean. Skin diseases and lice are frequent companions. You return to your insula. It creaks in the night. Fires are always a threat. The upper stories are flammable, unstable, and crowded. And in this city, where privacy is a luxury, someone is always nearby snoring, whispering, shifting in the dark. And still, outside the window, Rome continues. The clatter of a chariot wheel, the hiss of voices passing below, the bark of a dog echoing from some far-off courtyard. This, too, is Rome. Not just empire and marble, but endless motion, enduring noise, and a daily rhythm defined by shared space, fragile structures, and simple survival. Now, gently, let this version of Rome fade a little. The streets dim, the shouts drift into background hums, and the smell of garum fades behind. Cool stone and candlelight, when you're ready, we'll turn our gaze toward the palaces and the boy who would become emperor, a boy named Nero. Now we shift our attention from the crowded lanes and tenement roofs to a different Rome, one glimpsed through shaded colonnades and polished marble corridors. Here, the air smells of incense, beeswax, and fresh-cut laurel. The sounds are fewer, more measured, quiet footfalls, the rustle of tunics, the faint strum of a lyre in the distance. This is the world into which Nero, Claudius, Caesar, Augustus, Germanicus was born, though he was not always called by so many names. His birth name was Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, and from the beginning, spake beneath his feet was paved, not with destiny, but with danger. Imagine yourself observing from a cool marble atrium in the villa of his mother, Agrippina the Younger. She is ambitious, calculating, a daughter of Germanicus and descendant of Augustus. She knows that Rome's imperial court is a stage for survival. Power here does not pass peacefully. It is seized, inherited, and sometimes eliminated. Agrippina's marriage to the Emperor Claudius, her own uncle, was a strategic move, and it placed her son in the direct line of succession. Claudius, aging and easily swayed, was convinced to adopt young Nero as his heir. The whispers of poisoning would later follow Agrippina's name like a shadow, especially after Claudius's sudden death in 54 CE, when Nero became emperor at just 16. At first, things seemed promising. Nero, the teenager emperor, was guided by the Stoic philosopher Seneca and the competent general Boris. Together, they tried to mold him into a just and moderate ruler. For a few brief years, Rome saw a relatively peaceful administration. Coins bore Nero's image beside his mother's. The Senate was respected, and the treasury stable. But underneath the surface, tremors began. Nero grew restless with constraints. His tastes leaned toward performance, not politics. He loved the theater, the lyre, and chariot races. He wished not only to rule Rome, but to be adored by it on stage, in person, as an artist. It was a desire deeply unbecoming of an emperor in the eyes of the elite. And then there was Agrippina. She had helped build his throne, and now she expected to sit beside it. Her presence loomed. She issued orders. She appeared on coinage. She attended Senate meetings. Key and Nero, no longer a child, began to chafe. The details of what happened next vary by source, and time has obscured motives with myth, but most accounts agree that Nero arranged for his mother's death, perhaps after more subtle efforts to sideline her failed. One tale describes an elaborate collapsible boat designed to sink while she traveled the Bay of Naples. She survived the wreck and swam ashore. Eventually, the method became more direct. Assassins were sent. Agrippina, they say, died calmly, instructing them to strike her in the womb. From that point on, something shifted. Nero's reign grew darker, more erratic, without Agrippina, without Boris, and increasingly without Seneca, who would later be forced to take his own life. There were few left to restrain him. And then came the fire in July of 64 CE. A blaze broke out in the Circus Maximus, Rome's vast chariot-racing stadium. The summer winds carried the flames quickly, leaping from shop to shop to roof. The fire raged for days, consuming homes, temples, entire districts. Imagine the smoke curling into the sky like a second dawn. The people fleeing, arms full of what little they could carry. The shouts, the crackling timbers, the chaos. Rome's tightly packed buildings, many still wooden, gave little resistance. When it was over, most of the city lay in ruins. Nero was not in the city when it began, but stories spread quickly. Some claimed he watched it from a tower. Others that he played his lyre as it burned. It is unlikely, but the legend persisted. In the aftermath, Nero tried to help. He opened his palace grounds to refugees. He brought in food supplies. He even began rebuilding the city with wider streets and fire-resistant materials. But suspicion lingered to deflect blame. Nero found a scapegoat, the small, strange sect known as Christians. They were still relatively unknown at the time, viewed with confusion and mistrust. Their refusal to worship Roman gods, their secret meetings, their stories of a crucified leader, all made them easy targets. Nero's persecution of Christians became infamous. Some were torn apart in arenas. Others, according to later accounts, were coated in pitch and set alight to provide evening illumination in Nero's gardens. These stories, dark as they are, were recorded decades later and may have grown in the telling, but they speak to the tone of the times. Rome, under Nero, had become unpredictable, theatrical, and dangerous. As the years went on, Nero's grasp on power began to slip. He alienated the Senate. He executed rivals, real and imagined. He continued to perform in public singing, acting, racing chariots while the empire around him trembled. In 68 CE, rebellion flared in the provinces. The Senate declared him a public enemy, and Nero, once the golden child of Rome, found himself abandoned. His end was not on a battlefield, but in a suburban villa. surrounded by a dwindling circle of loyalists. As soldiers approached, he panicked. He could not bring himself to take his own life. At last, with help, he did. His final words were said to be, "Qualis artifex perio." What an artist dies in me. Imagine the silence that followed, the echo of that final performance fading into the quiet dawn. The imperial palace, half finished, the scent of dust, of roses, of old incense lingering on empty colonnades. Nero was gone, but his story remained twisted by time, exaggerated by enemies, and yet unforgettable. A boy emperor who sang while Rome burned, whether in truth or only in legend. Now, with Nero's shadow gently retreating, we'll turn our attention to something even more hidden than his secret corridors. Down beneath the streets of Rome, beneath temples and bathhouses, where flickering torchlight barely reveals a carved bull and a circle of initiates. Let's descend into the strange and secret world of Mithras. Beneath the marble plazas and mosaic floors of Rome, there is another Rome, one quieter, darker, and steeped in mystery. Imagine yourself descending a narrow staircase, lit only by flickering torches. The air cools with each step, and the scent of damp stone grows stronger. You pass through a small arched doorway into a long, low chamber. It is shaped like a cave, though it has been carefully constructed. Vaulted ceilings, stone benches lining the sides, and at the far end, an image carved into relief on the wall. A young man in a flowing cape, wearing a Phrygian cap, plunging a dagger into the neck of a bull. This is a Mithraeum, a temple of Mithras, and very little of what happens here ever reaches the daylight world above. The cult of Mithras was one of many so-called mystery religions in the Roman world, esoteric, symbolic, and focused on personal spiritual transformation. But unlike the public rites of Jupiter or Mars, the cult of Mithras was closed to outsiders. No women were allowed. No public festivals were held. It was not a religion of the state, but of soldiers, merchants, and officials seeking something beyond the traditional gods. Mithras himself is an enigma. He seems to have originated from older Persian traditions, perhaps linked to the Zoroastrian deity, Mithra. But by the time he appeared in Roman religion around the 1st century CE, he had taken on new stories, new symbols, and a distinctly Roman flavor. His central myth, so far as we can piece it together, was the tauroctony, the slaying of the cosmic bull. In carvings repeated across the empire, Mithras is shown kneeling atop the bull, driving a dagger into its neck, while various animals, usually a dog, a snake, and a scorpion, gather around. The bull's blood, it was believed, gave life to the world. From death sprang creation. But these images were never explained publicly. They were revealed only through gradual initiation. And that secrecy, combined with the lack of written scripture, means much of the cult's belief system remains veiled in shadow. Imagine now that you are an initiate. Your journey begins not with prayer, but with ordeal. Go. The cult had 7 grades of initiation, each marked by trials of silence, darkness, perhaps cold or heat, and always secrecy. You might be blindfolded, led by the hand through a labyrinthine space, your senses disoriented. You might be made to kneel, to answer symbolic riddles, to recite oaths of loyalty. Once accepted, you would take your place among the brothers, seated on stone benches facing inward toward the altar. A shared meal would be held, perhaps bread, wine, and meat going the communal feasts of other mystery cults, but always with care, always with ritual. The lighting, the arrangement, even the utensils used symbolic weight. There are stories, too, of a ritual bath in bull's blood, taurobolium. Though this may have belonged more to the cult of Sibyl than Mithras, some historians believe that Mithraic initiations may have included symbolic versions, perhaps a drop of blood or red wine poured over the initiate, perhaps a theatrical reenactment of the bull slaying. Whatever form it took, The goal was always the same: transformation. And this transformation was deeply personal. Mithraism offered no path for the masses, no imperial salvation. It was a private commitment, a kind of spiritual training believed to strengthen the soul for the afterlife. The world was seen as a battleground of forces light and dark, order and chaos, and Mithras, as the heroic slayer of the bull, represented the triumph of cosmic harmony in the Roman army, especially among officers and frontier troops. Mithraism found fertile ground, spoke of loyalty, courage, and secrecy. Its temples spread from Britain to Syria, wherever legions marched. But even at its peak, the cult never became truly public. Its silence was part of its power. Now, picture Mithraeum at twilight. The torches gutter. The meal is over. A faint trace of incense lingers in the cold air. The men file out in silence, stepping from shadow back into the noise and light of the empire. And then, slowly, the temple is forgotten. With the rise of Christianity in the 4th century, mystery religions fell from favor. Mithraic temples were sealed, buried, and eventually lost. Centuries later, when they were uncovered beneath churches and homes, their carvings remained intact, but their meanings were largely gone. All that remains are stone benches worn by time, altars still bearing marks of candle flame, and the mysterious smile of Mithras himself, forever frozen in the moment before the bull falls. We leave this underworld now, gently ascending the stair once more. As we return to the surface of Roman life, we will find ourselves not in the smoky streets of Subura, nor the shadows of secret cults, but in the scented, sunlit rooms of the upper class. There, a different sort of ritual plays out each day, a quieter struggle of status, beauty, and expectation. Let us now step into the life of a Roman patrician woman. Let the world grow quiet for a moment. The city still breathes beyond the walls. Ox carts creak, hawkers call out from distant courtyards, but here, inside this domus of the Roman elite, the noise seems filtered like a distant tide. The villa rests in a wealthier district of Rome, perhaps on the Esquiline Hill, or within walking distance of the Palatine palaces. The stone walls are thick, the floor is cooled by shaded porticos and polished marble. The scent is one of beeswax, perfumed oil, and rosewater, faint but ever present. Now, imagine yourself in the inner courtyard, the atrium, its shallow pool catching shafts of morning light. The bustle of servants has already begun the survey. In linen tunics, carry jugs of water, prepare cosmetics, clean garments, sweep sand from the mosaic floors. And at the heart of this household, reclining on a cushioned couch, the lady of the house, a Roman matrona. She is likely in her 20s or early 30s. Marriage often came early for Roman women of ranks and times as young as 12 or 14, usually arranged by family for political or social gain. Love, if it came, was secondary. Her name might be Livia or Cornelia, perhaps Fabia or Domitia. It is derived from her father's lineage, for Roman women did not carry individual names in the same way as men. Her identity is bound tightly to her house first, her father's, then her husband's. Yet, within that boundary, she wields influence. She begins her day not with labor, but with appearance. The Roman elite placed extraordinary importance on presentations, not merely vanity, but as a reflection of status and virtue. Her hair is styled intricately by handmaids trained in the latest fashions, sometimes braided, sometimes twisted into elaborate buns that require pins of ivory and bone. Cosmetics follow. The jars are opened one by one. A skin whitening paste made of vinegar and powdered lead is applied sparingly. Its dangers are not yet fully known. The eyes are darkened with coal imported from Egypt, and the cheeks dusted with crushed red ochre. A touch of saffron on the lips, or perhaps a gloss made from honey and wax. The process is long and sometimes tedious, but it is a ritual, reassuring, familiar. The Roman woman does not paint herself for pleasure alone, but as a symbol of dignity and discipline. To appear unkempt would suggest a lack of self-control. It's an invitation to gossip in a world where reputations are fragile. She dresses in a stola, the long-sleeved gown worn by respectable married women, and over that, a palla, a draped shawl of fine wool or imported silk. Colors and fabrics speak volumes. Purples and crimsons are prized, especially those dyed with costly Tyrian murex. Once prepared, she attends to the affairs of the household. The Roman matrona is no idle figure. She oversees the slaves, manages the accounts, tracks inventories of grain, oil, and wine. She arranges for the education of her children, organizes religious observances, and makes sure offerings are made at the household shrines the lararium where spirits of ancestors are honored each morning with incense or a few drops of wine. If her family is particularly wealthy or politically engaged, she may also play a subtler role in public life, entertaining guests, organizing banquets, and forging alliances behind the scenes. A well-spoken wife could enhance her husband's standing simply by hosting the right people at the right time, with the right appearance. But for all her influence within the walls of the home, Roman society is not hers to shape directly. Women may not vote, nor hold office, nor speak in the Senate. Their virtues are praised in poems and on tombstones: chastity, fidelity, modesty, but their ambitions must be carefully veiled. Imagine her now, seated in a shaded room known as the tabline, reading letters or dictating responses to a slave scribe. The room is adorned with frescoes, perhaps a pastoral scene, perhaps myths of goddesses who, like her, navigate power through grace and constraint. Later, in the early afternoon, she may visit the baths. The Roman thermae are not only for men. Certain hours or entire facilities are reserved for women. She travels with her entourage slaves, carrying towels, scented oils, sandals. The journey is short, and she rides in a curtained litter to shield her from dust and curious eyes. The baths are steamy, warm, and loud. Here, surrounded by murmuring voices and the splash of water, she steps into another kind of ritual cleansing. Yes, but also social. She might trade gossip, learn news from distant provinces, or hear tales of senators' wives and their intrigues. Returning home, she reclines briefly in her own garden, perhaps reading from a scroll of Ovid or listening as a young slave reads aloud from Homer. Dinner approaches. A patrician household's evening meal, or cena, is no rushed affair. It can stretch for hours: 3 courses, reclining couches, wine diluted with water, dishes of dormice, oysters, roasted game, honeyed fruits. Her position is often beside her husband, though she does not eat as heavily. To be delicate in appetite is considered refined. When the lamps are lit and the guests have departed, she may return to her room. The day ends with another cleansing perfumed oils rubbed into her skin, pins removed from her hair, sandals laid carefully aside. She may visit the lararium once more, whispering prayers for her children, for her husband, for the future, and then she sleeps. Her bed is wide, its mattress filled with straw or feathers, the covers of wool dyed with soft vegetal tones. Beyond the curtained window, Rome stirs faintly, an occasional clatter of hooves, a barking dog, the distant call of a night guard. She has done her duty. She has been virtuous, beautiful, and composed. She lives not only for herself, but as the ideal of what Rome believes a woman should be. And in the morning, she will begin again. And now, torches have burned low. The streets of Rome, once echoing with the clang of sandals and the cries of vendors, grow quiet. The public fountains still trickle. A cat slinks along a wall. Somewhere behind heavy wooden shutters, a family sleeps, as they have for centuries. We've wandered gently through the shadows and sunlight of ancient Rome, through its grime and grandeur, secrets and rituals. We began where few history books linger, in the dense neighborhoods of the ordinary, among communal toilets, salted fish sauce, and sleepless nights in noisy tenement blocks. It is here, in the places where most Romans lived, that the empire truly breathed. Then we trace the strange and solemn rise of Nero, a boy crowned too soon, raised under the shadow of his mother's ambitions and crushed beneath the weight of unchecked power. His story is one of fire and loneliness, excess and fear, and it remains a haunting reflection of what happens when empire and ego entwined too tightly. From there, we moved downward, literally and metaphorically, into the hidden world of Mithras. In the still air of underground temples, we glimpsed a kind of faith that demanded silence, secrecy, and sacrifice. One that offered no promises of glory, only initiation into mystery. And finally, we stepped back into the light, into the carefully curated beauty of patrician life. There, in tiled courtyards and perfumed baths, we saw a different kind of struggle, not for food or shelter, for reputation, refinement, and quiet dignity. The Roman woman of status held a delicate balance, power wrapped in obedience, luxury laced with duty. Across it, all the poor and the rich, the known and the hidden ran one persistent thread, the rhythm of Roman life. It was a rhythm shaped by birth and status, by gods and ancestors, by duties passed down through centuries, moved in patterns both familiar and strange, and it continues to hum faintly through the stones and ruins that remain. But for now, that rhythm slows. The streets are quiet. The shadows lengthen. The empire, so vast and vibrant, recedes into the stillness of memory. You, gentle listener, have walked its alleys and its palaces. You've heard its prayers and its secrets. Now, there is nothing more you need to do. Let your breath match the rhythm of the night. Let the dust of ancient footsteps settle. Let the weight of history melt away into the silence, and rest, knowing that even the eternal city, for all its noise and motion, always found time to sleep. Good night. Tonight, we travel east, Cass, to the islands of Japan, but not the Japan of bullet trains and neon skylines. We're going far deeper, into forests where the cedar trees whisper secrets older than memory, into mountain valleys veiled in cloud, into wooden homes where the floorboards groan like they remember every footstep, into a world where nothing is truly alone. Because in this Japan, this world of folklore and ancient rhythm, you are never truly alone. Not when you eat, not when you bathe, not when you sleep. Spirits known as comet drift through every fold of existence. They inhabit the wind, the rocks, the grain of the rice in your bowl. Some are benevolent, watching quietly. Well, others are a little more playful or a little more dangerous. You might think it sounds magical, but try living it. Tonight's first segment is about what it would feel like to exist in that world. To wake up in a quiet Japanese village centuries ago, and to try to make it through a single day without offending a fox, angering a toilet, or being judged by the invisible souls of your dinner. Let us begin. Imagine yourself waking to the soft clack of a bamboo shutter. Morning light filters through a paper screen, gold and dappled, and the faint smell of rice smoke drifts in on the breeze. A rooster calls, slow and half-hearted. You're in a thatched farmhouse in a quiet village tucked between wooded hills, perhaps somewhere in the Edo period, but really, the age hardly matters. This world could belong to almost any time in pre-modern Japan. You sit up slowly, but even the act of rising from bed is a gesture with spiritual weight. The household kami, sometimes thought of as guardian spirits, are believed to linger near hearths, doorways, wells, and even pillows. Your actions are never unwitnessed. You slide open the wooden door. The floorboards creak softly beneath you, never quite empty, always seeming to murmur their own memories. You must greet the day with gratitude. A careless word or thoughtless gesture might bring misfortune, not by wrath, but by quiet withdrawal. The kami are easily insulted, and even more easily embarrassed. Out in the fields, the early light lies pale on the water-filled paddies. These paddies are home to no comida, rice field spirits. They are gentle, usually, but they demand proper respect. Before planting, a ceremony must be performed to invite the spirit into the fields. And before harvest, another to thank it. To eat rice without observing the proper rites is considered both rude and dangerous. The rice spirit might abandon you, your crops might fail, or your stomach might turn. The grain carries more than nutrition it carries, the divine now. Imagine you're sent to fetch water from the village. Well, as your sandals crunch across the narrow path, the stone rim of the well emerges from shadow. But you pause. The well is a threshold liminal space where the spiritual and material worlds meet. Spirits might dwell within, or just as likely, you might pass a Kawanokamiya river, God on the way. You bow, just in case. You draw the water slowly, eyes down. It's never wise to look too long into deep places. Many tales begin with the gaze held too long. Flicker of movement at the edge of your vision. Probably nothing. Probably back in the house. You make your way to the binge of the toilet. Here is another threshold. The Benjogami is the spirit of the latrine. Not something we often think about in modern life, but in traditional Japanese homes, these spirits are present and easily offended. A dirty latrine might anger them. Neglected offering might bring misfortune. Some stories warn of consequences, far more colorful, but we won't go into those tonight. You might leave a flower, a polite nod. Even in the most private moments, you are not alone. It's time for breakfast. Steamed rice, a bit of pickled plum, perhaps a bowl of miso soup. You offer a small portion to the come in the ninth household shrine. Just a few grains, a drop of tea. A ritual repeated daily, quietly, the rhythm of their lives. You do not eat before the spirits do. That would be impolite. Outside, you hear laughter, children chasing something, a fox, perhaps. Foxes are common enough, but in Japan, no fox is ever just a fox. The kitsune is a trickster, clever and sometimes cruel. They say the kitsune can take human form, usually that of a beautiful woman, though sometimes an old man or even a boy with a limp. They can possess people, control their minds, or simply lead them into the forest, where time works differently. Foxes are messengers of Inari, the kami of fertility and agriculture. You must not insult them, even if one eats your chickens, even if it laughs at you. You bow again, just in case. You walk the village paths, past moss-covered stones and quiet shrines. Perhaps you pass a tree wrapped with sacred rope shimenawas, signifying that the spirit within is watching. You bow again. Bow becomes a habit, a kind of physical prayer. Better to bow to a stone with no spirit than to pass by one that watches. You're tired. You've barely made it through morning, but there are still Yurei the dead who walk those with unfinished business, lingering anger, or forgotten funerals. There are the Tsukumoga more ordinary household items that, after 100 years, come alive and develop souls of their own. Even a sandal, even a teapot. At dusk, the high, no kami fire gods must be appeased as you light the hearth. Fire is sacred, a purifier, a protector, but also, like all kami, unpredictable. Finally, night falls. You slide the paper doors close, the candle gutters, Dream drifts at the edge of sleep, and still, the spirits are near. You've survived the day, barely, but it's only your first. Tomorrow, a stranger may visit, and they may not be who they seem. A shadow might flicker along the garden path. The wind might carry a whisper in a language you almost understand. Almost. In a world where everything has a spirit, everything matters, every gesture, every offering, every mistake. Not many outsiders will last even a day, but the villagers do. They live this rhythm, They walk this path, and the spirits, for the most part, let them be. Now, a time before time, a world not yet ordered, a land not yet tamed. The air is thick with mist, the ground warm beneath the feet, and the sky well. The sky isn't quite as we know it, 'cause, in this story, the sun is not yet where it belongs. This is not the world of farmers and hearths. This is the world of the kami themselves, the high gods of Shinto myth, living not in heaven as we often imagine it, but in Takamagarada, high plane of heaven. It is a realm just adjacent to ours, not entirely reachable, a place of ceremony, beauty, and drama. And like all families, even divine ones, the kami had their quarrels. At the center of this story is Amaterasu, the sun goddess, the radiant ruler of the heavens. She is light, she is order, she is warmth and discipline. And she is also weary, 'cause her brother is Susano-no Mikoto, the storm god, brash, wild, impulsive, associated with sea winds and chaos. A younger brother with too much energy and not enough reverence. When their father, Izanagi, the creator god, gave his children domains to rule, Amaterasu received the heavens, Tsukuyomi, the moon, and Susanoo, the seas. But Susanoo wasn't satisfied. He raged. He wept. He declared he would visit his sister before descending to the land of the dead. That visit did not go well. Imagine a divine household, silken robes, lacquered halls, golden trees, and into this walks Susano, trailing storms behind him. He tramples her rice fields, throws filth into her sacred halls, even flings the body of a flayed horse into her weaving rooma. Deeply shocking act, even for a god. The maidens die of fright. The order of heaven is broken. Amaterasu, devastated and disgusted, withdraws. She hides herself inside a cave, the Amanawato, the rock cave of heaven. And with her disappearance, the sun disappears too. Now picture the world without her. Darkness spreads, unending. Crops wither, cold creeps across the land. Evil spirits stir in the absence of light. The balance of the world tilts, as if the axis of reality itself has gone askew. And so, the gods gather. A divine council convenes outside the cave's mouth. They are desperate, but measured. They cannot simply pull her out. This is not a problem of force, it is a matter of persuasion, performance, of ritual. First, they place a mirror outside the cave. Then, the jewel of Yodaleda to become one of the imperial regalia. They hang sacred cloth from the branches of a nearby tree. And finally, they begin to dance. And here, the story becomes both strange and delightful. Amina Wuzum, the goddess of dawn, of mirth, and of revelry, climbs onto an upturned tub and begins to perform. Not a stately dance, but a wild body, almost absurd one. She stomps, she sings, she bears parts of herself to make the other gods laugh, and they do laugh loudly. The raucous noise echoes through the cave. Inside, Amaterasu pauses. She listens. How can they be laughing? She wonders. In a world without light, curiosity stirs. She opens the stone door just a crack. The mirror catches her light, reflecting it back to her. She sees herself radiant, golden, alive. And for the first time, perhaps, she sees what the world sees in her. At that moment, one of the gods, perhaps, Amnataji, carpals the door wide and throws it behind him. Another, quickly stretches a rope across the entrance, so she cannot return to her solitude. And so, slowly, gently, Amaterasu steps forward. The world brightens. The shadows slink away. The rhythm is restored. This story is more than myth. It is metaphor. It is ritual. It's reenacted in sacred dances at Shinto shrines, in the rhythmic beat of drums, in the slow unfolding of fans and steps during Kagura performances. It is also political. The imperial family of Japan traces its divine lineage to Amaterasu herself. According to the Kojiki Japan's oldest chronicle, her descendant Ninigi was sent to Earth with the sacred mirror, Queeth, the jewel, and the sword, to rule his great-grandson. Imu became the first emperor, and so the divine story became a foundation for political legitimacy. The sun goddess was not just myth, she was ancestry, heritage, identity, but she is more than that still. She is the embodiment of what is proper, what is measured, what is light, and her kiva place of withdrawal, grief, and returns, not unlike the rhythm of life itself. Think again of the cave, dark, still, echoing with silence, a place of comfort, perhaps of retreat. But outside, the world turns, life stirs, and eventually, light returns. There is no need to rush. The sun returns when it is ready, as it always has. Let us now turn down a quieter path, a darker one, not sinister, not quite, but shadowed. The kind of path where the trees grow close and the lantern flickers as you pass. The kind of path where the wind doesn't always move with the trees and sometimes moves against them. This is the world of the yokai. Yokai is a broad word. It means strange thing, bewitching apparition, curious presence. They are not gods, though some were once kami. They are not ghosts, though some were once human. They are other, tricksters, monsters, spirits, and sometimes just household objects with a grudge. They live in the forests, yes, and in the mist. But they also live in paintings, in scrolls, in whispered stories, in things half glimpsed and half believed. They are part of the furniture of Japanese folklore and ever central, always present. We begin with one of the most famous, the kitsune, the fox again. Always the fox. You remember the kitsune from early era shapeshifter, servant of the god Inari. But not all kitsune are divine messengers. Some are mischievous, others malicious. They may seduce a traveler only to vanish in mist. They may lead a drunken man through the same crossroads over and over until morning comes. But kitsune are not merely illusions. Some stories tell of them marrying humans, bearing children, living as dutiful wives for years until their tales are discovered, or a charm is broken and they flee, weeping, into the night. Some families, especially in rural areas, even claim descent from kitsune with pride or fear. To cross one was dangerous, to respect one wise. Foxes, after all, are always watching, just behind the shrine, just beyond the firelight. The tanuki, the raccoon dog. Now imagine a figure, squatting beside the path, with a round belly and a cheeky smile. This is the tanuki, sometimes translated as raccoon dog, though it is its own creature entirely. In folklore, the tanuki is a jester, a shapeshifter, like the fox, but more silly than sly. They transform into monks, travelers, teapots. Sometimes they play drums on their bellies. Sometimes they pretend to be statues. So often they just want to laugh. But there is wisdom in the tanuki too. They remind us not to take things too seriously. Stat transformation, even ridiculous transformation, is sacred. And that joy is a kind of power. In towns and temples across Japan, you may see tanuki statues, pot-bellied, smiling, wearing straw hats. They guard restaurants, shrines, even homes. Their gaze is never quite still. The kaso bake, the umbrella. Spirit then, there are the tsukumogami, once mundane objects, now animated with life after 100 years of neglect. Picture an old umbrella, paper torn, one eye painted on the shaft. It hops on one wooden leg, its tongue long and lolling spills from the side. This is the KSA-OBAKE. It does not bite. It does not haunt. It startles. It reminds that even forgotten things remember. Being useful, the no-para bow, the faceless ghost door perhaps. You see someone on the road, a woman in a white kimono, her hair dark, her face turned away. She speaks gently, perhaps asks you a question. You step closer, and she turns. Her face is smooth, utterly blank. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. This is the no-para bee. It does not chase. It does not scream. It simply shows you what is missing. Then vanishes. Facelessness is, in its way, more disturbing than violence. The absence of self, the loss of humanity. A dream where everyone you meet has no face, and yet you still feel watched. These beings rarely harm, but they linger, in dreams, in memory, in quiet. The Roka bee, the long-necked woman not night. You may sleep beside a fellow traveler, perhaps a woman, quiet and kind, but in the deep hours, her neck stretches, impossibly long. She floats through the air, watching, listening, her body still asleep. The Roka bee may be cursed or born that way. Some are aware of their nighttime selves, others are not. Again, we see the theme transformation, hidden identity. It's the line between the human and the other. Why, okay, I often dwell in the in-between. They are never entirely monstrous, never entirely benign. They reflect our fears not just of death, or the dark but of being forgotten, of becoming something else. A parade of spirits, and once a year, in some stories, they all gather. The Hayaki Yago, the night parade of 100 demons. Picture a winding procession, moving through the hills or through a quiet town. It's foxes in human form, lantern-headed spirits, umbrellas and teapots dancing beside ghostly nobles. A cat with two tails and wise, watching eyes. A child with a second mouth beneath her hair. Laughter, drums, footsteps with no source. They pass in silence or in revelry. And those who witness the parade are changed. They're lucky. They forget what they saw. Not. They are pulled along. The parade is a reminder that the border between the human world and the spirit world is paper thin. That there are more beings in the night than we could ever name. But also that the strange has its place. That the world is richer for its shadows. That even monsters march in step. The night has passed. The spirits have marched now. Morning rise, soft and golden. The light slipping gently through paper screens. The rustle of silk, the scent of pine. You are no longer in the forest, nor lost among yokai. You are in the refined world of the Heian court, where the supernatural still lingers, but in carefully managed forms. It is the 10th century, Kyoto, then called Heian-kyo's, the imperial capital. The court is ruled not only by emperors, but by etiquette, by poetry, and by unseen forces. Here, spirits are not feared, worshipped, appeased through layers of ritual. We begin at the gates of a Shinto shrine. The shrine groundstone lanterns line a graveled path, their sides worn smooth by the hands of many generations. Between them, vermilion torii gates rise like gentle flames. Pass beneath one, and you step out of the mundane world and into the realm of the sacred. Not far from the city's bustle, the shrine is wrapped in stillness. You hear only the crunch of your sandals on gravel, the soft rustling of trees, and the faint strike of a bell in the distance. Shrine maidens might go move like whispers. Their white robes and crimson skirts seem untouched by dust. They carry offerings, small dishes of salt, rice, and sake. Everything precise, everything deliberate. Here, nature is not backdrop, but presence. The sacred tree, tied with the Shimenawa rope, is not symbolic. It is a living dwelling of the kami. The spring that bubbles at the back of the grounds is not just water, it is purity itself. This is not a place for frenzy or fire. It is a place for harmony. The role of the elite now. Imagine a nobleman, a courtier of the Fujiwara clan, perhaps stepping from his lacquered palanquin. His robes trailed behind him in many layers, embroidered with symbols of cranes and chrysanthemums. He has written a poem in anticipation of this visit, comparing the morning mist to the breath of the gods. He is not here out of mere piety. He is here because to prosper at court, one must stay in favor with the unseen. Court life is filled with rituals to mark the seasons, to appease the spirits of the dead, to honor ancestral deities, and especially to prevent Kigara impurity, misfortune, illness, bad dreams. These are not seen as random. They are spiritual disturbances. Perhaps a kami has been angered. Perhaps a restless ghost has wandered near. Perhaps the invisible threads of the world have been tangled by a misstep in etiquette. The solution: a visit to the shrine, a purification rite, an offering of rice and words. Even the emperor participates in these rites, not merely as ruler, but as divine intermediary. He traces his lineage to Amaterasu herself, and so, in the great shrine's eyes, Kasuga and others, his emissaries perform rituals to ensure balance between heaven and earth. The Gagaku and the Dance Yu are invited now to stay a little longer. The air stills. Kagaku ensemble court musicians gathers beneath a pavilion. Tei tune ancient instruments. The sh, a reed organ shaped like phoenix wings. Kwa, the hichiriki, a double-reeded flute with a plaintive sound. Handakoto, whose strings seem to echo the sighs of wind and water. The music begins slow, spacious, otherworldly. It does not rise in crescendo, but unfolds in ripples. And into this sound steps a dancer, Miko, again, or perhaps a noble woman trained in ritual performance. She moves with quiet precision. Her sleeves arc like birds in flight. Her fan opens like dawn. This is Kagora's sacred dance, a reenactment, a prayer in motion, calling forth of harmony. The dance may honor Amaterasu's emergence from the cave, or it may be simpler, a seasonal offering, a gesture of thanks for rice harvested or disaster averted. The gods are not summoned with noise. They are invited with grace. Aesthetic and Spiritan Heian Japan. Beauty is not frivolous. It is essential. Its crooked tree may be more sacred than a straight one. A misshapen pottery cup, more treasured than perfection. Even the writing of poetry is an act of devotion. Courtiers exchange verses beneath cherry blossoms, not merely to flirt, but to praise the fleeting nature of the world, the same world watched by the kami. When illness comes, or dreams trouble the mind, or omens appear in the flight of birds, the elite consult spiritual specialists, monks, diviners, shrine maidens. A misplaced hairpin, a wrong date for a wedding, these things could offend unseen forces. To live well is to live in rhythm with the spirit world, to keep balance between beauty and order, ritual and nature. Even in palaces, even in the heart of politics, the kami are never far. Drifting between worlds who are back now, back from the forest, from the shrine, from the shadowed corners where old stories breathe. The path winds behind you, but you need not look over your shoulder. The yokai have returned to their scrolls, the kami to their rice fields, their mountain peaks, their household altars. The lanterns are out. The dance has ended, but the sense of presence remains. Throughout this journey, we've seen a Japan layered not only with seasons and customs, but with spirits unseen, yet ever present. You began among the kami, whose invisible hands guided even the most ordinary moments, harvesting rice, tying a sandal strap, offering a bowl of salt. They were part of the texture of life, not distant, but near, always watching, always felt. You heard the myth of Amaterasu, the sun goddess, whose sulking dimmed the heavens, and whose laughter brought them back. Her story, strange and cyclical, echoed in court rituals, in festivals. In each sunrise, you wandered with the yakai umbrella spirits, fox tricksters, faceless wanderers, some amusing, some unsettling. All reminders that the world does not end at what we can see. And finally, you stood with the elite in a Heian shrine, where the sacred was choreographed, recited, and offered like poetry, where incense curled like memory, and dance summoned not attention, but reverence. Japanese mythology does not separate the sacred and the mundane. It layers them. It invites them to live side by side. In a world of spirits, everything matters. How you bow, how you eat, how you pass through a gate. There is comfort in that. It means you are not alone. Even now, as you lie back with their eyes closed, or not, some part of you may still feel the presence of those ancient beings. Not watching, exactly, but there. A breeze where there should be no breeze. Like the faint sound of bells in silence. You are not being judged. You are not being summoned. You are simply remembered. And now, it's time to rest. The kami are quiet. The lanterns are low. Let the old stories drift behind your eyes, soft as mist.